Hello everyone, welcome to part 3 of this video diary. Where we left off last time we had the outer walls finished, including this waterproof membrane that you can see here. Today we're going to be looking at the roof construction, detailing how we actually set up the structure of the roof and getting the whole thing watertight. Construction of the roof follows roughly the same principles as the construction of the walls. We start by building a frame, starting at either end with this vertical stud that you can see here. This stud is supported by diagonal noggins on either side, which we will ultimately mount the crossbeam on. These extra noggins pointing into the room will ultimately hold the crossbeam straight. With that frame mirrored on either end of the building, we can now mount the crossbeam. We actually ended up using one of the boards from the framing from the first episode. If you can remember, we built a wooden frame all the way around the hole into which we poured the concrete. This board was one of those we used in that process. As you can see, this crossbeam runs the whole length of the building. This will provide the central support for the rest of the roof framing. We were able to get away with using the framing from the first episode because this isn't really a structural piece. Rather than bearing any load, it simply holds the load-bearing frames in place. We opted for a relatively shallow gradient on the roof, much shallower than a house but a little bit steeper than a shed. This was to allow the rain to drain correctly but without giving us too much height. Remember, we have to keep within permitted development to avoid planning permission. Permitted development gives us a ceiling of 4 meters to the very top of the roof. These diagonal beams form the framing of the roof all the way along. These are just the same as the uprights in a stud wall. Here you can see all of the structural weight-bearing roof beams connecting to that central beam running all the way along. With that framing in place, again in the same way as we did with the stud walls, we can start to apply horizontal noggins for lateral support. We attach one noggin where the beam meets the wall and another noggin halfway up. This provides the framework for what we will eventually attach the roof boards to. It's worth repeating here that this is forming the outer roof. When we build the inner room, there will be an inner ceiling completely detached from this. With the roof framing now complete, we can finish the boarding and finish the membrane. First, we finish the boarding at either end of the building. These specially cut boards attached to the roof beams that we've just installed. With these triangular boards in place, we can finish the waterproof membraning, making all of the walls waterproof. This membrane, by way of some special sorcery, manages to keep water out but somehow let air through, so it's very breathable. Although I keep calling it waterproof, it's not completely weatherproof, so we do need to really get it finished before winter rolls around. As you can see here, the opposite end from where we were just working hasn't been boarded yet. So let's take a look at the construction process for those boards. The vertical studs that we installed earlier provide something for us to attach and glue the boards to. I like to think I was within the top 2 for my nail passing abilities on this project. With both ends now boarded and wrapped, we can now get onto the fun task of hauling the boards up onto the roof. This follows exactly the same process as when we boarded the stud walls, only this time we've got to get them 3 meters into the air. And while it may not look it, those boards were a lot heavier than they look. Just to add to the fun, this isn't actually the final installation. We had to dry fit these to make sure they all slotted together first. Then, as you'll see shortly, we have to take them down, cut them to length and then reinstall them. You can see an overhang at the end closest to us and where the boards meet the walls. These overhangs will be cut off once we've ensured they all fit. With the last board going in place and dry fitted, we can then go along and mark these for cutting later on.
In place. Well, what you don't want.
On either end of the roof we attach another diagonal beam. This gives us something to mark against and something to butt the board up to. In the final finish this will be covered and you won't see it. With the boards now marked, we can fit them permanently. Again, we glue them and screw them, only this time there's no overhang as you can see here. A strip of thick tar-based tape goes along the join at the top of the roof. This is just another waterproofing measure. With the roof fully boarded and permanently fitted, we chose the windiest day of the year to somehow get the weatherproof wrap onto the roof. At least if I fall off here I'm going to be on video so I can appear on one of those fail video compilations. Happily, however, neither of us did fall off and we did manage to get the wrapping onto the roof. Finally, a simple wooden frame and polythene makes for a great temporary window and door. This means we're no longer at the mercy of the weather and we can get on with working on the inside without worrying about things getting wet. Thanks for watching everybody. On the next episode we'll look at the inner walls, the insulation and the methods we're using for soundproofing. Stay tuned.